I hope that this is working. I suppose it is. So anyway, my name is Solomon Guajardo. I am the professor for Introduction to Public Management, Introduction to Nonprofit Management. And I apologize for all the inconvenience that was caused due to not being assigned to the course for the online classes. I didn't get the email until late afternoon, actually in the evening. So I tried to load everything up that I could on the website to the class, so I hope that you received everything. If not, please let me know. And I prefer that you email me at my personal email, given that I still haven't got the computer going and all that stuff. Feel free to also, as I mentioned in the email, you can send me a text on my cell phone, because I'm not going to recognize your phone. So I will do everything that I can to make this course enjoyable for you and also for myself, and I'll give you all the tools that you need in order to succeed. So let me start with going for the with the overview of the class. So if you have your syllabus open, let me start the syllabus and also the presentation for today's lecture. I probably will not go all the 4 hours since it's the first day, and it's just an introduction to myself, an introduction to the course. So if we can go to the first page of the syllabus, I would appreciate if you do that so that we can start. As you can tell from the first slide of the lecture, there's the lecture overview, which presents the course, reviews the syllabus, has the introduction to nonprofit organizations or NPOs, and some NPOs are also known as non-governmental agencies, NGOs, and so we'll try to use those interchangeably, but feel free to use NPOs since this class is about nonprofit organizations. The most important part of the lecture is going to be the service delivery model, because that's what you're going to have to develop for the first assignment. Based on the website based on the nonprofit that you select, and based on going through the websites, getting all the information that's there. And if you want to call the individual at the organization that you selected, that's fine. It's probably best that you probably have me do it, though, so I can tell them that we're working on a project. That way I can introduce you to the nonprofit and also introduce myself to the nonprofit. So any way you want to work it, that's fine. After the service delivery model, I'll talk briefly about the live cases for this course. And everything that I use on the live cases, you can replicate for your own studies. And that's why I selected the live cases. One of them is Voices for Children of Broward County. It's a good organization, but you'll notice that when I go through the sites and do all the when I apply the lecture material to the nonprofit, you'll notice that the nonprofit has a lot of weaknesses in terms of its structure. And then I have the other case study, which is the Covenant House, and that one has a very good structure. It has all the information that I need in order to do an assessment. And again, the first one, Voices for Children, although it's a good organization, there's a lot of information that's lacking on this website, and so you can use both of these lab cases to complete both of your assignments, because the issues that I discussed in both lab cases are going to be issues that you're going to confront looking at analyzing your organization. Now, for this course, there's several things that I want to do. First is to introduce you to the management of NPOs, nonprofits. The second thing is you're going to apply all the management operation topics to live cases, which is going to be your NPO, which you selected. And then I want you to, this course also provides a hands-on approach to analyzing NPOs. And by that, it means that you're going to use all the topics that I discussed in the class. You're going to use those to analyze the organization which you selected. That includes developing, for the first assignment, developing a delivery service delivery model, and then you can use your analysis to also to create the presentation. The second assignment is going to require that you analyze the financial statements of the NPO that you selected, so that way you can give an assessment of how well it performed financially. As a solvent, what is its debt, what's its revenue structure. So everything that you need in order for the organization to survive and to thrive and to provide its services is based on the revenue that it collects. So everything that we do in the class, you're going to apply to your NPO for the both first assignment and the second assignment, and also to develop the presentation. Okay, so if we go to page 4, I will discuss the objectives of the course and what I want you to acquire by the end of the course. That way you have the skills that you need in order to perform any type of organizational analysis that could be for a nonprofit, it could be for a public organization, and to the extent possible to a private organization. So all the tools and techniques are going to be, you can transport those to different types of organizations to conduct similar analyses. So the first course objective is to give you the ability to assess the composition and expertise of an executive board of nonprofits. A lot of the nonprofits have on their website the members of the boards of the nonprofit, and that includes obviously their names, but it also has a little synopsis of their expertise. And that expertise is important because that guides the NPO that you're going to select. Now, in some organizations, they just list the individuals of the board, but they don't give you any detail as to their expertise, where they work, and so in that sense you're not going to be able to assess their expertise. However, you could if you can identify them based on the information that they have on the website, and you can do a Google search. You can look at several ways you can actually get that information indirectly. Ideally, what you would want is to have the NPO have the information on the website about the individuals that constitute the boards. You can look at in terms of their ethnic background. You can look at their expertise in terms of their professional expertise, their education, what they bring to the organization. That's very critical because that guides the nonprofit. It also helps for fundraising and other activities of the nonprofit. So it's very critical that the individuals at the boards have the expertise that is necessary for the organization to perform its services and deliver its programs. The other thing that we're going to acquire in this class, and one of the objectives, is to assess the strengths and the weaknesses of the organization that you select. The strengths are, does it have a good revenue structure? Does it control its expenditures? Does it have very well-defined programs and services? How are they delivered? The weaknesses may be that there aren't any performance measures. You won't know, for example, how many individuals that are served during the year. What is the cost of their service? What is the cost of the programs? So those are weaknesses in the structure, which are going to prohibit you or prohibit the organization to assess how well it delivers the services. So one of the objectives is for you to, the course is for you to have the skills that you need in order to assess how well the organization is structured, how well the organization is managed, how well the organization delivers its services. And that goes to the strengths and weaknesses of the structure of the nonprofit. The other thing the objective for this course is for you to develop a service delivery model of the nonprofit. And that means essentially creating an organizational chart. But rather than creating an organizational chart, what you're going to do is identify the programs that is established, what the programs are actually delivering, who the program is supposed to serve, the target population, that's what we call the individuals that the organization is supposed to serve. Who do they serve? And one of the weaknesses that you're going to find across all your organization, across other organizations, is that population isn't very well defined. They may tell you that they're going to serve X number of individuals, but they don't break it down how many males are in the population, how many females are in the population, what's the ethnic distribution, of the population, what is the age distribution. Those are important. And the reason why those demographics are important is because it allows us to test whether the services and the programs are meeting all the needs of their target population. Some organizations may be very well in targeting males, but if the females are part of that population, those females aren't being served completely and readily by the organization. And then conversely, some organizations focus specifically on the females or individuals within a particular ethnic group, and that excludes inadvertently the other members of the target group, and those are not being served well by the organization. So all the demographic information that is critical to assess the program, to assess how well the services programs are being delivered to individuals, those demographics aren't readily available. And so that means that you're going to be able to assess really how well the organization meets its goals, how many individuals does it serve, what is the cost of the services, and whether or not it's achieving its outcomes. That's why all this information that's on the websites is very critical for you to assess how well the organization is functioning. And the objective, one of the objectives is for you to develop a service model, and that service model identifies indirectly the strengths and also the weaknesses. And for your assignment, the first assignment, when you develop the service delivery model, you're going to create that on the website. You can also use any type of financial reports that they have, because that's going to list the programs that they have. And so you can use all this material that you're going to collect to create a service model that's going to identify the programs, that's going to identify all the revenue that's collected, if it's there, also the types of individuals that are served. Now, when I go do the case study, you're going to get the first case study that I use, the Voices for Children of Broward County. Their service delivery model is incomplete, and that's because it lacks all the information that I need in order to create it. And so when I write, so if I was to write the first assignment, I would identify that the organization does very well in providing information in terms of the services, and what there's nothing there in terms of the finances and everything else that's needed for those programs. The other thing that the organization lacks is all the performance measures that I need in order to assess how well the organization is meeting the goals and objectives. So, and for your assignment, you'll do the same thing for children for Broward County, and also for and duplicate that for your organization. And based on that, or on your service delivery model, then you identify the strengths and the weaknesses. What are the programs that they're supposed to deliver? Based on that, then the other objective of the course is for you to develop performance measures or key performance indicators, which identify the number of individuals that are served, who is it serving, the cost of service, and any other types of measures that you need in order to assess the strengths and the weaknesses of the organization. Now, in terms of performance indicators, one thing that we're going to do in 3, I believe, is assess the revenue and expenditure and diversity of each organization. Those key performance indicators are important because it addresses how well resources are being managed. The other key performance indicators that we're going to develop are those that deal with the financial, your second assignment, all the financial indicators, and those are important because that's going to allow to give information how well the organization is able to generate revenue, how well the organization is able to control expenditures, and also to assess the strength of the organization in terms of its liquidity. If it has a lot of debt, then what assets can it sell off in order to meet that liability? We also have things that are in there with respect to the solvency of the organization. Those are all important key performance indicators that are important to donors and to foundations as to whether or not that organization is worthy to invest in. And so those key performance indicators are critical for assessing the management of the organization. So from a course objective standpoint, there are critical performance indicators, but there's also other performance indicators that are important. The number of individuals served, the cost of service, and those are important because those help you to benchmark the organization, benchmark the programs and services. 5 of the syllabus. On page 5, I continue with the course objectives. And on lecture number 3, that expenditure diversity of the nonprofit. All of those are I have examples for you in the lecture. I show you how to estimate the revenue diversity of the. I show you how to estimate the expenditure diversity of the nonprofit. Those indices are important, especially for the revenue diversity, because when we go to that lecture, based on that index, that tells you how well the organization is able to attract revenue from multiple sources. The more sources of revenue that the organization is able to obtain, the more stability it has. It has the resources to meet its expenditures, but also has the resources in order to expand services and the programs. So the more revenue, the greater the revenue diversity, the more stable the organization tends to be, the greater the ability it has to fund its programs more completely. And by funding, that means hiring the individuals that it needs, having the materials and supplies that are required for the program and the services in order to meet the needs of the clients. The other objective is that you're going to, based on all the analyses, you're going to provide recommendations on how to improve the organization in terms of its structure, in terms of the services and services and programs, and that's all based on the information that you collect on the organization. So based on all the recommendations that you're going to provide me are how to improve the organization in terms of its revenue, in terms of its services and delivery, and in terms of what it needs to assess of each program and each service that it provides. The other objective is for you to utilize Excel or any other type of software that you need in order to create all the indices that we're going to use in the class. So now if we go to page 6, I'm going to discuss the structure of the lectures. I am a very applied person, so I try not to do a lot of theoretical work, given that this course is to give you an introduction to nonprofit management, but also what I'm trying to do is give you the management topics that you need in order to assess not just the nonprofit, but also a public organization. And if you work for a private organization, the management topics and the techniques that I show you in this class can also be applied to a private organization. For example, all the things that we do for the liquidity measures, currency measures, the debt measures, the things on the return on investment on human capital, all of those come from the private sector. So all of those you can apply to a private organization. All the management techniques that we use can also be applied to a government organization, and then because I'm discussing this class in the nonprofit world, we can use it to assess nonprofits. For each management topic, I'm going to give you specific tools and techniques that you're going to utilize for your first assignment and second assignment. And again, these are things that you're going to use as you progress in your professional career. And as you become a manager or if you become an executive like I did. All of what I'm teaching you is the things that you're going to need in order to succeed as a manager and as an executive. Because ultimately, what we're going to be responsible for is the organization, also the human resources, the personnel that you have, and also for improving the services and programs of that organization. And so my point of view is looking at it from one point. And so if you're for my employees, then what tools and techniques do you need as an employee in order for you to do your job, to excel in your job, and to also to give you the skills that you need in order to get promotions, in order to find other more management type of positions. So everything that we do in this class is geared to giving you the tools and techniques that you need in order to analyze any type of organization. So the reasons why I have the live case studies is that everything that I teach, I'm going to apply to those case studies, so that you know how the material that I discuss is applied to this case study, but also that you can apply it to the nonprofit that you select. And then part of the lecture structure, I want to give you the opportunity to discuss your case study. So if you have issues, I want you to discuss them. That way we can discuss them in the class, either online or the students that are in class. Because you're going to learn more looking at your case study and applying the materials that I discussed, more so than if you could just rely on the case studies that I chose to do the lectures on. And so we go to page number 7. The reading materials that I have in the listed in the course site, those are just for your benefit. You don't necessarily need to read them. They're just there as supplemental material, because that supplemental material has additional techniques that are used by organizations to assist nonprofits, and so that's just supplemental. The assignments I have mentioned throughout the lecture. There are three assignments. Assignment number 1 is going to be based on essentially lecture 2 and 3, where we discuss, and part of this lecture, where we discuss the service delivery model. And again, the organization that you select, you're going to develop the service delivery model based on all the information that's given on the website. That includes looking at the mission statement, that includes looking at the programs, looking at the reports where they serve people. More critically, I ask that you have an organization that has financial reports, because those financial reports also list the programs and the expenditures for each program. And so those programs, based on all that detail, you're going to be able to develop a more comprehensive service delivery model. And again, let me say that for the Voices for Children of Broward County, that website, when we go through it, and when I developed the service model, you'll notice that it only has like 4 boxes, as opposed to a more thorough model that resource. It has the it has the intended outcomes, outputs, and intended outcomes. You'll notice that a lot of as I mentioned, a lot of the organizations do not have key performance indicators, so you're not able to assess how well they meet their goals, how well they meet the mission. And the assignments are geared for you to analyze that. Again, there are 2 assignments. The third assignment, the PowerPoint, like I said in the syllabus, and like I'm going to say now, you can use the first assignment to create the PowerPoint. You can use the second assignment to create the PowerPoint. That's up to you. You decide which. Uh, if I were in this class, I would try to do everything all at once to get it done. And by that I mean I'm going to finish lecture number 6 early in the week. That way you have that, so that way you can, if you have the financial report, you can create those indices, because you don't need the lecture in order to do that. You just need the examples. Then what you do is you just build around it, right, based on those indices, whether or not it has a good revenue structure, whether or not it's solvent, what is its debt capacity, and those indicators you can just build around it. So you can do assignment 1 and assignment 2 concurrently if you want. You can do assignment 1, then assignment 2 later. You can do, again, the PowerPoint are based on any other assignment that you want. So I structured it in a way that you can work on it at your own speed, or you can wait for the lecture if you want, if you're insecure about something, or you can always contact me. So, and again, I gave you my cell number only because I don't trust the phone here. I gave you my personal email, and then you have my Nova email. So there's multiple ways that you can contact me in order to get your assignment started. Excuse me. Any questions? So far, so good? Yes, ma'am. I can't hear you. I'm having trouble pulling up this. It's in one of the files. So the syllabus is a draft. Yeah. Yeah. The due dates are very flexible. Although I have due dates on the site, you'll notice that the first assignment I'm actually not due on the Saturday. I gave an extra 2 days. The last assignment, the second assignment, there's a due date. It's up to you if you want to do it earlier or submit it 2 days after. I don't, although I'd say in the syllabus penalize people, I really don't. I just want you to get it done, because as soon as you get it done, the better I have to review it and give you feedback on it. And so that's why I put those on there. And then For the grades, I'm a very fair and liberal grader. What's more important is for you to do the assignments. And based on my feedback, I just give you the feedback, and it's up to you to revise it. What I would like to do is this: if you decide to transition to another place of employment, they require writing samples. And so what I want you to have is two very good writing samples on assessing the organization in terms of its operations, but also in terms of its finance. Because as you progress in your career, you're going to be put in situations where you're going to have to assess the finances of the program or the services. What is it that you need? What's lacking? How much additional money do you need in order to provide the program? How much additional money do you need to provide the service? And if you don't quite understand what is the current financial condition, then you're not going to be able to justify that. And one of the things, as a former budget director, one of the things that I've always asked personnel, program managers, and individuals that had service that were responsible for delivering services, is to justify why they need. And so if you can't justify why you need additional money, then I'm not going to give it to you as a budget director, because you're asking for resources that I need for other things. And so one of the things, that's why I structured the assignments the way that I structured them. So if you understand the service delivery of an organization, you understand what it's supposed to deliver, you understand its mission, you understand how many people it serves, and say, for example, that the number of people that you're serving is increasing. Well, if the population is going to increase, that means what? You need additional staff. Additional staff means additional money, right? For salaries, for supplies, for materials, right? If they need computers, then you got to get money for computers. You need money for printers. You need an office space. All of that stuff is important. And in terms of the writing assignments, right? If you're able to articulate that to a prospective employer, then he or she is going to. This person understands the role of finance, understands the role that programs and services play in helping the clients, or if it's in the private sector, right? You understand how finances and personnel are critical in order for you how to do the marketing. On the nonprofit side, it helps you to understand what the organization needs in order to meet the additional demand. And so you acquire a skill set that most people aren't going to have. And you're going to notice that if you deal with people, interact with individuals who work in nonprofits, you'll notice that they're very good at understanding programs, but not very good at understanding how human resources is critical for that program. They're not very good at understanding how financial resources is critical for delivering services and for meeting the expenditures of each program. So from that standpoint, you're going to have skills that most people aren't going to have. And this is very similar to what the skills that people in the business school and the MBA program are going to acquire. So you have those skills similar to those individuals in the public administration program that are dealing with public administration and nonprofits, but also you have the skills that are necessary for people that are getting in their MBA. So I'm doing multiple things in this class, although it's an introductory class. I'm exposing you to a lot of material, but those are critical for you to understand how nonprofits are managed. And they're managed very similar to public organizations, and they're managed very similarly to private organizations. The differences are that nonprofits rely on donations, they rely on grants, they rely on membership fees, and that's where they get their revenue, because they're not necessarily selling anything. They're not, and they can't tax, so they have to generate their money through grants, through donations, through foundations, through sponsorships. So they have different sources of revenue, which are important for them. The expenditures are very similar, right? And so again, so these assignments are good for you to have a very good writing sample that you can take to somebody, say, this is what I've done in this course, these are the skills that I've acquired, and so that makes you a more attractive candidate. Okay. Now, as you probably tell, I do a lot of coaching, I do a lot of mentoring, I do a lot of advising. And so, although you may not necessarily need me to complete the assignments, I want that I'm wanted and that I'm useful. So if you have questions, give them to me. You can call me again. Call me on the cell phones. You have my emails. Yeah, I'm very accessible. I don't know what your experience has been with previous professors, but I'm very accessible and I'm very down to earth. probably more down to earth than I want to be, but I'm very down to earth. I'm not arrogant. I'm very approachable, and I prefer that you call me Sal as opposed to Professor Wahardo or Doctor Wahardo. That's a little too stiff for me, and I'm not that kind. I'm originally from California. I grew up in California, and been I lived in 6 different states, and so I've acquired the ability to accommodate and be very very down to earth only because I had to, in order to meet new people in different places that I live. And so that's the approach that I have for students. I'm very approachable. You can, again, just as long as you don't call me at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm fine. All right. Now that I covered if you have any questions about the syllabus or the grading, again, on the grading side, I'm very flexible. I'm very liberal. Uh, there's, let me put it to you this way: there's no reason why you shouldn't get an A in a class. You really have to like struggle to get less than an A. Um, so just do the assignments. I'll correct them. I'll go through the grammar. I'll correct all of that stuff. So I don't penalize on grammar. I don't penalize on that stuff. Uh, do have page numbers and those sort of things. Those are important. Uh, just things that you expect from individuals. That's what I expect from you. Any questions? Assignments? Any questions so far about the lectures? Okay. All right. Now, nonprofit organizations. There are, as you can tell, 1.4 million nonprofits in the U.S. If you can imagine a profession, every profession has some type of nonprofit organization. For example, have bar associations. American Bar Association. Each state has a bar association. Every teacher belongs to either to a state association or to the National Education Association where I used to work. There's other educational associations. The dental profession has an association, the American Dental Association. Psychologists have a nonprofit, right? When I worked at finance, I had my own association, meaning that the Government Finance Officers Association. I actually worked for that nonprofit, and so every major profession has a nonprofit. There are no, there are several major areas where nonprofits focus their attentions to. Oh, let me say this. One of the reasons why I like to as you notice, I'm a new professor here. I come with a lot of experience in working in government, but also working in nonprofits. And one of the things that was attractive to why I was hired was because I have the skills that are essential uh, nonprofits. And so those skills I'm going to discuss with you in class, but also you're going to apply them as I go through the lectures. And so unlike a lot of professors, I I actually worked in government and nonprofits, so I don't go by textbooks because those textbooks are very outdated and they're not very current, and they don't really discuss that you need in order to work or in your profession. And so what I try to do again, I noticed throughout this first introductory lecture, I discuss all of that and I mean that over and over again. I want you to feel very comfortable in applying the material to your case study, to your non. And then the more you talk to me, the more comfortable you're going to get doing. If you've never done a financial analysis, it can be intimidating at first, but once you do it, and once you understand where you get the data from, over again. And so if someone mentions for you, well, what's the profit margin? Well, it's going to be revenue minus the expenditures, right, over expenditures, and that gives you the profit margin. In other words, it exceed expenditures, right? So although these terms may be sort of fancy, they're not really fancy once you apply them. But it also means that when you go to an interview and you ask somebody, well, what's the profit margin of the organization? And then they're going to say, okay, well, this person understands revenue and expenditures. And what does it mean for us in order to thrive? And so that's a very good question to ask of anyone, especially if you're going for. Let me give you a quick example. Prior to coming here, I interviewed for a foundation in New York, and They wanted to increase revenue and increase expenditures. So I asked the individuals that were interviewing me, well, what's your current profit margin? And they said, what do you mean? Well, you want to increase revenue, but what is your current revenue streams? Is it growing or not growing? And what are your expenditures? And although it's the growth of the expenditures outpacing the growth of revenue. And so when I asked them, the reason why I asked that, because I was being hired, come in as an executive director. I interviewed for the position for executive director of the foundation. For me, that's very important, because if I understand the amount of revenue that they're collecting and the expenditures, that means that also means that as an executive director, I got to come in and understand, okay, what revenues are growing, which aren't growing, what type of new revenue can I get, how much effort of my job, or what percentage of my job am I going to have to apply to revenue? What types of fundraisers am I going to have? Am I going to get corporate sponsorships? So if I'm asking this question, I'm not asking because I want to, I got you on this. No, I want to understand how well is the organization being managed in terms of revenue, in terms of expenditure side. You want to control this as much as you can. You want to have without revenue increasing, because that means that the organization is going to go under. Right? So you don't want that. So if you ask what's the profit margin, that's what you're asking. Okay, how stable is the organization? Is it growing? Is the expenditure, the revenue is growing? Right? So in terms of an indicator, when you look at your financial records of the organization that you have, make sure that you have multiple years of financial reports, because the profit margin should be increasing year after year. If it's sliding, if the percentage is sliding, that means revenue probably isn't growing as fast as it should be, or expenditures are growing at a faster rate than they should be. All right, so you could have a combination of two: less revenue, greater expenditures. That's going to decrease the profit margin. If you have greater expenditure, higher revenue and expenditure are stable, then you're going to have what? A higher profit margin. Right? Okay. Yes. Yeah. Because you're talking about how well can the organization maintain itself given its current structure. One of the things that you're going to do for your assignments is that all these financial indicators that you're going to calculate, that tell you whether or not the organization can sustain itself based on its what? Based on the services that it provides, based on the expenditures that it has, and based on the current revenue that it collects. Do you notice that I was watching PBS the other day, yesterday in fact. Right, PBS has a fundraising drive every quarter, and it provides new programming, right? And it provides people to donate based on new programming. Why do they do that? Because they need to raise revenue in order to continue what? Providing services, right? So organizations, in order to generate revenue, will have fundraising events or special events that the downside with doing that, for example, is that those are one-shot revenues, right? And one-shot revenues are for what? For one time. And so you constantly have to generate new revenue in order to keep that revenue stream coming along. Okay, so NPOs. Some of them focus on animals, providing services to abandoned animals. And you'll notice, I watch a lot of CNN, and you'll notice every now and then there's a commercial for donating for different types of nonprofits that deal with animals. Yes, there are those around. Right? There's some. Since we're in Florida, there's an organization that gives that for greyhounds. I don't know if you guys go to the greyhound races. Once those are done, they either abandon or whatever it is. So there's an organization that gives out those animals. They care for them and then they distribute them to, they find another house for them. Right. So that's what I mean by the NPOs that focus on animals. A lot of them focus on arts and culture and humanities. Right. For example, the museums. A lot of them are nonprofits. Libraries, which I analyze, profits. Like the Carnegie Library started with an endowment from Mr. Carnegie. He gave billions of dollars for that. There's again museums. There's the art centers. Also, education. As I mentioned, the National Education Association. There's also organizations like this university is a nonprofit. So education means there's schools, elementary schools that are nonprofits, like charter schools. A lot of those are nonprofit. Universities and colleges are nonprofits. You have environmental nonprofits like the Sierra Club. You have the National Geological Association that also deals with environment. So there's a lot of environmental nonprofits that are created to protect the environment. The National Audubon Association does a lot of stuff with birds and aviaries and that sort of thing. So then you have nonprofits that deal with health. And one of the things you should consider is if you're looking at if you're going to get into an organization that deals with health, nonprofit organizations that deal with health, there's a lot of those nonprofits actually work in concert with the public sector. Because what happens is a lot of the public organizations with health do not provide those services. They rely on contractors, on professional services. Those professional services deal with those nonprofits are geared to provide services to people that are indigent, individuals with special needs. And so those nonprofits are able to provide those services because government doesn't do that, but government just gives them the money to do it. So there's a connection between the nonprofit world and government and the public sector. And a lot of folks miss that interconnection because a lot of the nonprofits get their funding from governments to provide services. Okay, if we go to page 10 on the lecture, then you have the service areas, human services, and human services, deal with things, housing, things with giving the resources that people need to stay above water, to survive. You have other organizations that do with international foreign affairs. Those are just generally political organizations. If they're not political organizations, those are non-government organizations that provide services to developing countries. What happens, for example, in the federal government has contracts with non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, that go and develop economic development programs, for example, in Latin America or in African countries that need those sort of development in order to become economic, so that they can develop the economic sectors that they need in order for the community to actually become sustainable. And so there's a lot of NGOs, nonprofits that deal with international affairs, and that's what they do. They provide services like there's a lot of housing things for individuals that an international that they build houses for them. They go ahead and they set up businesses for them. Again, those are international organizations. Then you have the public social benefit organizations. Back when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we used to talk about Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader was a guy that did a lot of consumer protection laws. He also created a foundation. That foundation was a nonprofit that advocated for having safe vehicles, safe appliances. And so those are essentially public interest organizations. Then you have all the religious-based organizations that are nonprofits. A lot of churches seek nonprofit status so that one, they can avoid paying taxes. But also it's because they're religious organizations, they're looking for tax exempt status because there are other things that they're exempt from, like property taxes. But if you're a religious organization, you don't pay property taxes because you have the 501(c) designation. And I'm a preacher's kid, and so but I know a lot of ministers who don't take of the nonprofit status, and so they end up paying taxes on the property that they buy and all that other stuff. And I tell them, listen, you should apply for nonprofit status because that means you don't pay taxes. And they don't realize that religious organizations qualify for nonprofit status. That's because they're not familiar with the structure. Okay. NPOs, you have associations. All right. Again, I mentioned several of them. The Bar Association, the National Education Association. The associations are basically based on membership. Right? And the National Education Association, NEA, is based on what? Teachers. Teachers apply for the association because that association then advocates for them. Right? They want better services. Right? They want higher salaries. They want better benefits. Right? They want to make sure that the federal government and the state governments are not are not implementing policies that are going to do what? And adversely affect the teaching profession and adversely affect them. So the associations are built typically for members, that they advocate for members. The Bar Association represents attorneys, right? The American Medical Association represents physicians, right? They lobby for them, right? They make sure that if the state governments and federal governments are going to legislation, that legislation doesn't what? Burden the profession. And then you have foundations. Foundation. Okay. The foundations are basically, and then you have the Bill Gates Foundation. Right? Those foundations are established in order to give money to whom? To nonprofits, right? Because they also endow organizations, right? For example, this business school, right, has an endowment from Mr. Wizenga. Okay? Other organizations receive money from major carry out their programs and services to conduct research. So the foundations are essentially established, right? You have the Hughes Medical Foundation, which was created by Howard Hughes, a billionaire. He created that, one, to save taxes, but also to further medical research. So that foundation gives out money. The Bill Gates Foundation, for example, gives out money to organizations to carry out programs and services that are needed. So the foundation specifically exists to give out money. You get that money to give grants because you have to apply for them. So if you're a nonprofit, and you want to increase your revenue, the one thing that you consider is there a foundation that I can go to get that revenue? And it's a grant. And those grants over and over again, provided that you what? That you meet the criteria of the grant, that you have performance measures in order to justify that the program is meeting what? The needs of the clients that you have. That's why when you go, I mentioned earlier, key performers are critical, because if you don't have those, you're not able to demonstrate what? The need. You're not able to demonstrate that the resources that you're going to do what? Delivering those services. So the key performance indicators are important for grants, but they're also important for demonstrating how well you're doing your job. And then you have research-based nonprofits, and these research nonprofits, that's what they're geared for. They do, research on medical research. They do social science research. Right? They do all different types of, and they send out surveys. They want to find out, what are your preferences and where you shop. What types of things do you shop for, right? There's all kinds of different types of research that conducted by these organizations. Then you have the service-oriented nonprofits. The two, those are service-oriented. One organization provides housing and for and people that are abandoned. Another organization provides an adolescent to become economically independent. So those are based service-oriented NPOs. Now, one of the things that I want to do professionally, now that I'm here, I'm part of this community, is to, one, grow the program. But more than just grow the program, what I want to do is, for students that are interested in nonprofits, is to start building a network with the nonprofit sector here in Broward County and in South Florida. The reason for that is because the nonprofits contribute tremendously to the economic wealth of the South Florida. They employ individuals. Those individuals then use their money to buy services, right? They pay taxes, they do all that stuff, right? So the NPO sector in South Florida, but also in provides a huge economic impact to the region and to the economy. They provide a huge impact to whom? To the population. Why? To the services they provide. So they're constantly contributing to what I call the human and social capital of the region. And so one of the things that's overlooked when individuals talk about the nonprofits is how they contribute to society. They're providing that governments don't provide. They're providing services that the private sector doesn't want to provide or can provide, or they're too expensive for the private sector to provide. Because remember, the private sector is geared towards what? Generating a profit, right? Generating profit to whom? To people in that, right? So if they can provide services in a way that they can generate a profit, they'll do it. Otherwise, they're not there. If there is no profit motive, they're not going to invest into that service or program. That's why this exists. Okay. Things that I want to do as I'm, since I'm here as a professor, not only as a professor but also now a member of this community, is to start developing a network of nonprofits. Because if you work for a nonprofit, or you're interested in nonprofit management, then you're going to have to get entree into that sector. How are you going to get entree into that sector? Well, you have to have individuals that are what? That are involved in that sector. Either having an advisory committee that comes in and talks to students, or developing relationships with nonprofits, so that if there are employment opportunities, internship opportunities, then you have what? You have a go-to person that's going to provide that entree. And also, if you want to move around, if you're currently working on a nonprofit, and you want to go to another nonprofit, then the chances that if you network are great if you have someone that understands the nonprofit sector. Okay, so back to this lecture, nonprofits contribute, 800 billion to the U.S. economy. They account for 6% of GDP. Right? They generate $7.7 trillion in revenue. So the nonprofit sector is very, very vital to the economy. And most people don't take that into consideration when it's just a nonprofit. No, they're providing critical services. They try to do it as efficiently as they can, but they also do what? They also hire people, right? So people are employed. So they are constantly adding to the economy. In addition to making sure that all the needs of special populations are being met. Why? Because government can do it and the private sector can do it. And nonprofits are also critical for what? They contribute in terms of labor hours that are donated. Right? Without volunteers, without individuals who are going to help the nonprofits aren't able to deliver what? Their services and programs in a way that is efficient. Right? So the more volunteers that you get, the more free service that they get. But also that means that what? People's needs are being met. So if you look at nonprofits, the reason why they want volunteers is because it saves them money. It's an expenditure that they don't need to incur. Because the more people that you have, the more expenditures you're going to have. So if the more volunteers that you have, you're getting what? Free services. Not only do you get free services, those individuals are doing what? Helping you deliver the programs and services to the people that you want to serve. Okay. Now comes the part that's very important for your assignments. And this is the part that's probably most important in the lecture. Because these questions that are on the lecture are the questions that you're going to have to answer for your assignments. So the first one is, how is the MPO structured? Right? Does it have a board? If it has a board, then does the board have the expertise that is necessary to guide the MPO? Let me tell you briefly about Voices for Children in Broward County. It has a board. Several of the members on that board do not have any social services experience dealing with kids. Some of them are attorneys, family attorneys. They're involved in family law. That to some extent is related to the service that the organization provides. The other folks that are on the board don't have that expertise. So then the question becomes, how is that board member going to be useful to the organization if that person doesn't have the expertise that is necessary for what? For those programs and services. If that person doesn't have the expertise for fundraising or for developing new revenue sources, then what use is that person on that board? And how is that board member going to help the organization do what? Meet its mission. So the first thing that you should consider when you start looking at assignment number one is that, does it have a board? Most likely it does. Is there sufficient information on those board member to give you confidence that that individual is very useful to that organization? If the majority of the board members don't have the expertise that is essential for the organization to function, then what does it say about the structure of the organization? It's going to have a weak structure. Why is it going to have a weak structure? Because the board members that the board members that comprise that board are what? Do not have the skills that what? For the executive director and the staff to make very good decisions on the services that it provides. It doesn't have the board doesn't have the skills and the skill set that to do what? To network with the corporate world to attract what? Donations, sponsorships. So the board is very critical for the management of the organization. If your organization has a board and all it has is a list of individuals, then you don't understand what, or you don't have the information that's necessary to assess how well those members are useful to that organization. So just listing board members is not good, because that doesn't give you information about what? Their expertise, their area of expertise, the skills that they have, in order for the executive director to make very sound decisions about how to guide that organization. If you have a board members, for example, that are just finance people, they're good for understanding finance, but good for generating revenue. They might not be good for what? For developing the programs and services that that agency delivers, right? They may not be useful for doing what? Developing a strategic plan for the programs and services for the short term and long term. Okay. The mission of the organization is critical. Is the mission very clearly defined? And it's yes or no. If you have a mission that has all these flowery statements in there about clients and their full potential, I have no idea what that means. Right? Salvo Hartle, your professor, has a bachelor's from UCLA, 2 masters, and a PhD. Did he reach his full potential? Probably not. Why? Because I'm still growing. I never reached my full potential. Right? I'm in the martial arts. I have a black belt. Did I reach my full potential? No. Why? Because I have 10 of those things to get. Right? I still got 1. I'm first degree black belt. I still have to do all the other stuff. Right? There's when you say someone reached their full potential, I don't know what that means. Right? You're here getting a master's degree. Right? Does that mean once you get your master's degree, you reach your full potential? No. Right? So I don't know what that means. Right? When it says, we want to have, give the clients the financial resources that they need. Well, financial resources in what sense? Right? Is that financial resources to buy food? Is it financial resources to acquire an apartment, to live independently? I don't know what that means. So if you have a mission statement that may seem to be sort of succinct and well written, if you start analyzing it, you're going to say, okay, hold on. If it has this mission, how are you going to assess whether or not you accomplished it? And so the mission tells you the types of services that you expect. Okay. It also should tell you sort of what is the outcome that they want to achieve. So, for example, if we want our clients to reach their full potential, what outcome do you want to achieve with that? And how do you know someone reached their full potential? In what sense? Right? And how are you going to measure that? Right? For you guys, they reached their full potential. Well, they have a 3.5. Does that mean that you can't exceed beyond a 3.5? No, right? If you become a manager at whatever organization you're at, does that mean you reach your full potential? No, because you're still executive director, right? It's something that you want to strive for. So so how do you measure it based on these sort of flowery statements? Does the organization have metrics in order to back up that's what the mission is accomplishing? And I'm going to say like 90% of the organizations that you analyze don't have those measures. They're not very good at measuring how well services are being delivered. Yes, ma'am. Well, yes, but the objectives have to be based on what? On the mission, right? And so the objectives have to stem from that mission. And if that mission isn't succinct, it doesn't tell you specifically what it is that they want to accomplish. And the objective itself, the goals and the objectives themselves are going to be very vague, right? So again, it's what's critical to understanding how well the organization is managed, how well any organization is managed, is understanding how that mission is structured. Right? That's why it's important to have a very good, very well-educated, well-rounded, and a very practical board that understands what the mission is, but it can also director and do what? Establishing the goals and objectives of the organization. And this all stems from that mission statement. If that mission statement is vague, then what happens with the goals and objectives? They're going to be very high or very vague. And so based on that, then how are you going to measure it? Because everything ties together. The mission ties to the goals and objectives tied to the mission. The performance measures need to do what? Tied to the goals and objectives and also to the mission. And so all of that should be all linked logically. And I'm going to tell you, based on my experience, government does it very well. Nonprofits don't do it very well. Nonprofits don't do it very well based on what? On the people that they have working in it. Right? And that's just the nature of the nonprofit world. Okay. So yes, one of the things that's very critical for your first assignment is understanding thoroughly what that mission means. And if you need to call the executive director and just say, or have me call them and say, what do you mean by this mission? What is it that you want to accomplish with this mission? That person should be able to do what? Tell you specifically what that mission means to that organization. You as an outsider can look at that mission and say, what? Well, based on what I read and based on the information on the website, this is what I think they're trying to accomplish. But does that mission statement actually reflect what's being articulated on that website? Do the programs tie directly to that mission? And if it doesn't, then it has a what? It has a weak structure. It has a weak management structure. It has a weak what? It has weak operations that aren't tied to the mission. Okay? So yeah, what's the if I ask you what's the mission of this class, what is it? Exactly. Get a thorough understanding of the management of nonprofits. That's the mission. How am I going to accomplish that mission? By giving you all the materials that you need to do what? To analyze the service delivery model, to analyze the financial condition of the organization, understand its revenue structure, understand its expenditure structure, understand whether or not it has what? Performance measures to assess the programs. And all of that's going to help you to do what? Accomplish the mission of this class that's going to give you the skills and techniques that you need in order to assess what? How well nonprofits are being managed. That's the mission. A goal is to do what? Is for you to produce two assignments and a PowerPoint presentation that does what? That can integrate all the course material and all the tools and techniques to develop a very good assignment that eventually you get an A. So the outcome of this course is to do what? Is to give you what? Better understanding of how it is or nonprofits are being managed, give you a better understanding of how to analyze those organizations, also the outcome is to give you what? The analytical skills that you need in order to analyze any organization, not just nonprofit, because the same issues apply to the public organizations and to the private sector. They all have the same issue. Is revenue increasing? Are expenditures being controlled? How do we know that we're serving the clients or the market, right, that we're trying to serve? Same issues. And the context and the environment, or what they call now the ecosystem, is slightly different for each type of organization. Okay. Let's go to page 15. I'm going to finish this thing in 4 hours. All right. Management operations issues. Okay. Programs and service goals and objectives. Are they stated? And some organizations are not. They just give you a description of the program to accomplish. They give you a description of the services that are being provided, not necessarily what they're trying to accomplish. right? We're feeding X number of people, right? This program is geared to feed or provide financial services to our clients, and that's all it has, right? Well, if it doesn't tell you what the objective is, it doesn't tell you what the goal. Well, first, what the goal is and what the objective is of the program. And so, what do you mean to do what? And how is the program providing those services for them? Now, if you're talking about shelter and housing, okay, so what is the purpose of that of providing them shelter and housing? Right, if they're being abused and abandoned by their parents, right, there's a reason why you're providing that service. It's to give them what? A safe environment. A safe environment so they can do what? So they can go to school, so they can, so they can socialize, they get to interact with people that are what? That aren't going to abuse them, that aren't going to abandon them. There's also an outcome to that. The outcome is to do what? To make sure that these individuals are able to what? To have sort of a normal sort of life so that they can get away from what? From all the abuse, right? So that doesn't scar them permanently, right? So they can overcome that, so they can become, members of society without doing what? Without becoming delinquents, right? So that they can thrive. That should be the outcome. But you're going to notice that a lot of organizations, the organization that you select isn't going to specifically say what the outcome is, because in many respects, in many ways, they can't associate the outcome based to the organization that they're managing. All right. So how are program and services goals and objectives stated? Right? Our program and service outputs and outcomes stated. Outputs. Outputs are essentially what is being produced by the program and service. Right? For example, how many kids did we serve today? If you're talking about the Covenant House, how many kids that we intake to provide them housing and shelter? How many kids participate in educational programs? That's an output, right? Right? How many new volunteers did we get? That's an output. Right? It's what the organization is supposed to produce. This Nova Southeast University, and it's supposed. What is one output? How many students did what? Graduates. Okay, what's an outcome? No, and an outcome should be what? That once you get out of the school, you should have what? All the skills and techniques that you need to do what? To succeed. Right? That's the outcome. Another outcome, right, is that what? You become that you have the human and social capital capacity, intellectual capacity to do what? To thrive in any sector that where you decide to work in. If you decide to work in the nonprofit sector, then you're going to have what? All the skills and techniques that you need in order to thrive in that sector. If you're going to work in government, you should have all the skills and techniques in order to thrive in that sector. That means you're going to enter as a senior analyst, or then become a supervisor, and then become a manager, and eventually become a director. Right? And if you're not going to become a director, then what? Then maybe you can create your own nonprofit or do something else, become a consultant. But the outcome is to do what? To give you everything that you need in order for you to be what? Productive in society. The outcome of this class is going to be similar. Right? I'm trying to do everything that you need, things that you need in order for you to do what? To succeed. Okay. Performance indicators. I mentioned this, many times so far. One performance indicator in this class is what? Your grade is one performance indicator. Okay. Performance indicator. Yes. Right. Now, for your professor, what's a performance indicator? Right. Yeah. Well, how well I did what? Impart the information to you. Right. Are you satisfied with the quality of education that the professor gave you? Okay. Evaluation later on in the summer quarter. Right. Maybe, I don't know. Do they have teachers evaluations here? All right. That's a performance indicator of what? Of the class. Right. How did the professor lecture? Did his lectures right, coincide with what? With the expectations of the course. Right? Did the professor provide you with the skills and techniques that you need to do what? To complete the assignments. Did the professor provide you thorough feedback on the assignments? Right? Did the professor meet the expectations that you had for the class? Right? Those are all performance indicators. Right? An output for me is what? All the lectures, all the templates that I give you. Right? Those are all outputs that I produced. Right? The outcome that I expect for that is what? That you do very well on the first assignment, you do very well on the assignment, you do a PowerPoint presentation that's based on both of those assignments, and you've done that what? Very well. That you were able to integrate how well I do as a professor is going to be reflected on how well you integrate the material in your assignment. So if you do a not so good job, it's not your fault. Whose fault is it? The professor's. Why? Because the professor didn't take the time to do what? To thoroughly explain what he or she wanted for each assignment. Nonprofits are the same way. Public sector organizations are the same way. Private organizations are the same way. If things aren't clearly defined, your population isn't clearly defined, your market isn't clearly defined, they don't have the resources in order to deliver those services, what happens? You get a faulty product, right? You get faulty programs, you get faulty services, you have a weak organization. At the individual level, that means what? You have a professor that doesn't know what he or she is doing. And you have a professor that doesn't what? Care what how he or she teaches what? The material that you are supposed to learn. That's how I'm going to be graded at the end of the semester, is how well you guys, right, did what? Acquired the skills that I thought that you guys should need to do what? Not just only do the assignments, but what? That you're going to have skills that you're going to be able to use where? At your job site. So if I give you things that you aren't going to be able to use at your job site, what good is taking this class? If you didn't learn anything about how to manage organizations by the time you're done, what was this class worth? Right? Those are the questions that I answer for myself. But those are also the questions that you need to ask about what? Your organization. Because why? Because you're going to live there 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, maybe on Saturdays. It's going to be your career. And if you work in an organization, nonprofit, public, or private, that isn't well structured, where people don't know what they're doing, you're going to be what? Miserable. And you're there just doing what? Going through the motion, and you're not doing what? You're not developing your full potential. Meaning that you aren't going to get any new skills. You aren't going to be promoted. And so what are you going to do? You're going to try to find another organization that's going to do what? Give you the promotional opportunities that you need, to give you the professional development that you need, right? For you to do what? You want to increase your salary, but not only increase your salary, to increase your self-worth. Right? If you're not constantly learning in the organization that you're at, you have to consider whether or not you want to be there. You have to ask the same sort of questions of organizations, because it's a relationship that you're going to endure 8 hours a day. And if the organization isn't providing you the opportunities to succeed, you're going to take all that frustration home. Right? If your professor, Sal Wahardo, doesn't give you all the feedback that you need, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to say, this guy doesn't, this. Why should I take another class from this guy? Right? You're going to say, what? He's a bad professor. Why was he hired? Yeah. So everything that I teach in this class, I apply it to myself, but also apply it to organizations. You always have to constantly do that. Why? Because you have to assess what? If you're married, for example, you always have to assess what? How well the interaction is with your spouses. Right? If things come up, you have to address them. If you don't address them, what happens? Right? If you have children, you have to wait. All right, is my child educated? Right? What skills and techniques is he learning at school? Right? Is my child interacting with other children? What is the outcome of the education that I'm providing for him? If you're going to parochial school, okay, does the parochial school provide him with all the needs that he needs in order to succeed, in order for him to go to university eventually, right? Now, how am I contributing to his education or her education? Right? So all these questions, not just for nonprofits, or what? For living. I'm just applying it to nonprofits. Okay. What are the revenue sources of nonprofits? Right? Again, does the organization acquire the revenue that it needs in order for the organization to what? Meet its mission. Provide the programs and services to clients. And does it have the revenue that it needs in order to meet the expenditures of the organization? In terms of personnel, in terms of supplies and materials, in terms of the office space, every expenditure that is possible for an organization to have, is that revenue sufficient for that? How many types of revenue does the organization collect? Right? Does it have state money? Does it have local money? Does it have federal money? Does it have, does it generate revenue through the sales and merchandising of its name, of products? Okay, does it have corporate sponsorships? Does it get money from foundations? Does it have donations from individuals? But you have to look at all the types of revenue that are possible and whether that organization is able to get those. And if it is able to get those, then what is the percentage? What is the percentage of each revenue source to total revenue? And is there opportunity to grow particular revenue? And just as based on my experience working in government, at one time there was this bias against getting grants and intergovernmental revenue because most people say, well, that comes with strings attached. Yes, it comes with strings attached. But what also are you doing? You're able to provide services based on revenue that you didn't have. It also frees up your own revenue. So if you're a nonprofit and you get a grant, you get revenue from the federal state government, that's good. Because that means that you're getting your own revenue that you generate, you can use that for other things. And this grant money that you get is used specifically for a particular program. That means you free up money to do other things. It also means that expenditures of that program are being paid by whom? By the person giving you the money. So the federal government, the state government, local government is giving you the money for you to provide that service for a particular population. And as long as you're providing that service for that population, you're going to continue to get revenue. That means all your other revenue that you generated goes to what? The things that are or other things, expenditures that aren't associated with that program. So intergovernmental revenue from the nonprofit side is actually very good, and that's something that you should strive to get if you can. If that population is able to do what? You're able to justify that program and that population to a state or federal government, and also to foundations. Okay. Operating expenditures are critical because those you want to control. You want to control those in the sense that here's sort of the catch with expenditures. Nonprofits are notorious for paying salaries. A problem with paying low salaries is that you're going to have high turnover. So one of the expenditures that you want to control, but make sure that is able to grow, is all the compensation that's associated with personnel. Because if you have individuals that are very good program managers, individuals that deliver the program services effectively to clients, you want to retain them because they're worth a lot. They have the expertise in order to do what? To provide those services to the individuals that you're going to serve. So you should be able to do what? To make sure that you provide a salary that is able for them to survive, but not only to survive, that's going to give them a salary that you're going to retain them. Because you don't want to lose talent. Because that means that if you lose that talent, you're also doing what? You're destroying the organization. Because it's going to constantly be what? Replacing people. So the services and the programs that are being provided are going to be provided what? Not at the optimal level. They're going to be provided just so that you can be able to say, okay, we served so many people. So rather than enhancing the programs aren't necessarily going to grow. Why aren't they going to grow? Because the people that are capable there, you just lost them. You don't want to lose a very good manager. You don't want to lose a very good case manager. Because those are the people that are doing what? Making sure that the program is being effective. And you need to compensate them. Other expenditures you try to control. Right? But salaries is one of those things that you have to, salaries and benefits. are the things that you want to control, but you also want to make sure that they grow. And if they're growing, what do you need? Revenue. Okay. So for both on the revenue side and the expenditure side, there's a thing called diversity. Right? How diverse is our expenditures? The more diverse the expenditures are, the more you should have high revenue diversity. Because high revenue diversity means that your revenue is constantly growing, and that you have multiple sources of revenue to do what? To meet those expenditures. Higher expenditure diversity also means that the types and number of programs and services that are being provided is also increasing. So as those programs and services increase, it also means that the revenue needs to increase. Right. So what I'm doing now, I'm giving you sort of the foundation, the questions that you need to ask for both your first and second assignment. So if you're gonna grade me, yes, Professor Wahardo provided us with the questions that we need to answer for assignments. Yes. Then all the lectures that follow this one are going to do what? Give you all the templates and everything else that you need in order to enter them. You are never left in the dark, and I'll never leave you hanging. Okay. Financial performance. Financial performance is very important for a nonprofit for several reasons. Very good financial performance of a nonprofit means that you're able to attract donors. Why? Because donors are going to be confident that you're able to manage that organization effectively, that their money isn't going to be wasted. You're talking about, and this is not just donors, but you're talking corporate sponsorship. Foundations are very high on financial performance. Right? You talk about sustainability. Can the organization sustain itself based on the revenue that it collects versus it provides? One thing, if the nonprofit has high debt, not good, because high debt means that you're borrowing to provide services and programs and services. Not good. High debt when it comes due, that means what? You may not have the revenue that to do what? To pay off the debt. That's a very important indicator of the debt burden of an organization. Solvency, right? It's important, especially if you're a foundation or a donor or a corporate sponsor. You want to see how solvent the organization is. Can it meet its financial obligations? Right? The higher the solvency, the more confidence that you have is what? That the persons that are directing that organization have the ability to do what? To manage its finances. You don't want to work in a nonprofit that's teetered on going under. Or you don't want to work in that's what? The solvency level stays constant because it means it's not growing. Now, in terms of organizational performance, you want to find out, if you're talking about graduation, how do you assess how well a university does? One is by the number of graduates that it produces. Right? If you have a 50% graduation rate, that's not good. Right? If you have a 70% graduation rate, that's nice. Now you can do that by department. If you have a department that's graduating less than 50% of its students, then what's wrong with the department? Something's wrong. It's either the staff or the professors, or a combination of the two. So organizational performance is how effective is the organization in meeting the needs of its clients? How effective is the organization in meeting its goals and objectives? Right? What percentage of the population is being served? If you're talking about a population that has multiple segments in it, meaning like different types of ethnic groups constitute that population, then it's what? the percentage of minorities that the program and services serves, the percentage of males and females that it serves, right? The percentage of individuals within those separate populations that are at risk, more so at risk than some of the others. Right? These are all performance and organizational performance indicators, key performance indicators that tell you how well the organization is providing services to the target population. And the target population is all those individuals whom you want to serve. Right? So if you're talking about an organization that deals with adolescents, you want to find out the percentage of preteens that it serves. Within those preteens is number of males and females. You want to break it down by ethnic group, then you break it down by ethnic group. That is important because it also indicates service gaps. Right? If you're underserved population, that the program isn't as effective as you think it is. But that means that you should develop special service delivery mechanism to serve that underserved population. If that means acquiring additional personnel, then you have to hire additional personnel that has the expertise that deal with that special population that you're dealing with. That's why those performance indicators are important. Now, I mentioned that early on, that in the lecture, that the organization that you select should have financial reports in it. Annual reports, audited. And if they have budgets, it's even better, right? Because you need budget reports. Try to get as much financial information that you can from that organization. If it's on the site, there should be multiple reports. Because the more reports that you have, the better assessment that you're going to be able to assess how well it's managed. Expenditures and the revenue, but also its solvency, its sustainability, its debt. You can see there's a thing that I like. It's human capital return on investment, which basically states is given all the personnel expenditures we have. For each dollar that we spend on personnel, how much revenue do we collect or do we raise? The higher that index is means that your staff is being very productive in doing obtaining the revenue that is necessary for you to provide those services. And it also means obtaining the revenue to be solvent. And it also means that it's collecting the revenue to have a high profit margin. So the more productive your staff is, the higher revenue you should have, but also it should do you should be controlling expenditures. Unless you're doing unless your revenue is increasing extremely well and you have additional programs that you have in order to do serve additional people and additional populations. So all of this stuff is linked all together. If you have a weak organization, you're going to have weak structure, you're going to have weak programs, and you're not going to know what you're doing. Okay. Now, short-term and long-term financial outlook goes to the sustainability. In this class, I'm scheduled, I think, next quarter or something like that to budgeting class. I was, as I mentioned earlier in the lecture, I was a finance director, and so I've developed lots of budgets. One thing that we're not going to do here is any type of financial planning or anything like that. But the good thing about having all those financial plans, all those financial reports for the organization, is that you can track the revenue and expenditures over time. You can see the growth rate of the revenue. You can see the growth rate of expenditures. If the population is increasing, you can also benchmark the cost of service. Now, the thing that you got to be careful is that if expenditures are increasing and your population is decreasing, that's not good because you're going to have high costs for less people. Ideally, what you want is to grow the population, the clients that you serve, right, at the minimum amount of expenditure, so that the cost of service is low. That's so for long-term, short-term, and long-term financial planning, you want to see the expenditure growth. You want to see how well the population is increasing. You want to see how well your revenue is growing, and what specific revenue is growing. So let me just there's certain types of revenue that are more volatile, and this is sort of a preview to the lecture on revenue diversity. If you're dealing with donations are very volatile. I mean individual donations, because sometimes when you're particular, you may have a very good increase in donations. The next year, those same people may not donate as much, or they may not donate. And so what happens with those donations? They're going to decrease. So one thing that you have to strive for if you're talking about donations is how to constantly grow those donations. And in order to do that, you have to do what? You have to market your service. And how is that marketing come very, very, what marketing? How well you can demonstrate to the donors that you're doing an effective job providing those services. So if you're talking about short-term, long-term financial outlook, is understanding each revenue source, understanding whether it's stable or unstable, and what is the growth rate, and what is the anticipated growth rate, and where it is where you have to dedicate most of your efforts to grow that particular revenue source. And there's ways that you can generate additional revenue that is going to able to give you a higher yield. And by that I mean, for example, there's for several organizations that I work for, well, finally, for example, would have an annual golf outing, and that golf outing would generate for $200,000, $300,000 above the donations that we have. That's additional money that we developed, that we grew based on those sort of things. I used to work for a nonprofit, and each year some of the volunteers will go out and raise money, and some individuals will raise up to $75,000 a year. That's one individual. Other individuals will get less, $25,000, $50,000. That was above and beyond the revenue that they will collect. So each year they will collect about $500,000 or so just in donations, right? So each year the individuals try to earn more and to attract more donations. Why? Because the more donations that they were able to get, the greater that revenue source grew. And if you had individuals who didn't perform as well the next year as the previous year, what happens to that revenue? It declines. That means what? That you may have to do what? The services that you want to expand, you aren't going to expand it because that revenue wouldn't come in. You can expand it anticipating what? That the following year you're going to be able to do what? Increase that revenue source. So if you're talking about the short-term, long-term financial outlook of an organization, you need to understand each revenue source, what drives it, and what is the expected yield for a particular year or future years. And if it's unstable, then what are you going to do with that? Be conservative. You want to be conservative with that revenue source so that you don't what? Overestimate. Because if you overestimate it and you don't get it, what did you do? You put the organization at risk because you expended money that you thought you were going to have to be you thought you were going able to what? To cover with additional revenue, and that revenue never came in. So understand each revenue source, what drives it, right? What are the factors that drive it? What is a more reasonable amount of revenue growth that you anticipate? And for those, you got to be conservative. You can't be, well, we expect a 10% increase in this revenue source. If you never got it, chances are that you're not going to get it. Right? And if you did get it one year, you got to ask yourself, what was this an atypical year, and what drove it? And can we expect it for the next year? Because all of that to short-term and long-term financial outlook of an organization. That is based on the financial reports that you're going to analyze. I expect you to do a long-term or short-term financial outlook, but just realize that based on historical trends, you can do one. You can anticipate what's likely going to happen for future years based on the low growth rate, the average growth rate, and the high growth rate. So you can create different scenarios.
What if you have a nonprofit that's based on public recent sort of gun violence related issues, obviously it's a hot topic as of right now, but what if it goes into decline later on? Like how would you predict that? Even with like that kind of software?
Well, yeah, for those, let me give you this example. When I was a finance director, one of the government started putting cameras for traffic violations. Okay, eventually you have an upswing in revenue. But what happens after people realize that there's a camera there and people start getting, what happens? It starts to decline. Okay, when you're talking about school safety and things, that initially you're going to get an increase. 3 years or 4 years down the road, if once sort of people think are comfortable and things aren't going to happen, what's going to happen to that revenue? It's going to slowly decline. Well, that's where the organization needs to think about, okay, if this revenue source is going to sunset, how are we going to provide this service given that this revenue source is going to decline? And so you have to do what? You have to come up with a way or find an alternative revenue source that's going to do what? Meet that gap. And the organization has to be able to do that. How are we going to do that? Well, you have to understand all its revenue sources. And if its predominant source happens to be public safety money, you're going to have to justify what? Why you need that money. You continue it. Yeah, you have to continue it. So you have to justify it, right? And you have to justify it in a way what? That program is doing what? Providing services. The program is services that minimize what? Minimize the risk of what? Experiencing what? Exactly, right? So you have to justify this and yes, we don't anticipate this to happen, but if it did, we want to make sure that we have the resources to do what? To meet all the psychological things that you're going to need, right? Provide the services that you're going to that you would have if an incident didn't occur, right? So all the services that are associated with a catastrophic event, like you have to make sure that those are in place. So you justify the continuous money doing what? Justify this is a critical, right? Even if you have a mass stabbing, right? If you have somebody come with a samurai sword, you're still going to have the sort of same effect. It won't be as catastrophic as somebody coming in with a rifle, a high-powered rifle. You're going to have individuals that are killed. Still individuals are going to be hurt, right? There was a security gap somewhere, right? So justify that money looking at security gaps, looking at service gaps, right? Looking at things that you would expect that money to fund. And if it's going to sunset, you have to say, hold on. If you're going to sunset it gradually. You have the ability to do what? Get additional revenue in order to provide these services. As a former government budget officer, that's what I would recommend agencies to do, because that also meant what? That this revenue is critical for this organization. You can't just take it away from them and expect them to do what? To provide these critical services. From what? You can't, if you don't have the revenue, you can't provide them. Long way of saying what? Justify why you need that money. Even if you don't anticipate an event like that occurring, you have to have the resources to do what? To meet that demand. Here, let me put in the concepts of hurricanes. When I was the budget director at Miami-Dade Public Schools, we made sure that we had sufficient amount of money for hurricanes. Because you can at least anticipate one hurricane occurring in a particular year, or a tropical storm. You can probably expect two. But if you have an odd year where you have 5, you have to make sure that what? You have sufficient resources in order to do what? To meet the destruction of those 5 hurricanes. And although we don't expect 5 hurricanes to occur in one particular year or 3, we still provided the funding for what? For at least 2. And if there was a third or a fourth, we made sure that we were able to get money from other accounts and switch them over to emergency relief. So now back to your question about public safety. That's essentially what you have to do. Okay, yes, we don't anticipate if it occur. This is what we need, right? Because nowadays, given the climate in this crazy world that we're in, you have to more or less anticipate it. Right? So if I helped you, I hope I did. If I didn't, at least I gave you some idea. Hey, maybe we can do that. All right. The other thing that's important, and something we're not going to discuss in this class, is a long-term strategic plan. And actually, it goes to your question. if you have a revenue source that's essentially going to die out, right, or sunset or removed, then strategically how can we meet that? How can we meet that change? In terms of services, it's the same thing. You have to develop a strategic plan for services. As the population changes, you have to the program and services has to change as with the population. So as the population changes demographically, right? Say for example, traditionally there was the predominant population as served was males, and then there's a switch in the population so that more females are showing up. And your strategic plan has to do what? Incorporate the increase in females. Let me give a concrete example. Universities. 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, what was the predominant student in class? White male. Okay? That's no longer white male. What is it? Now you have females, right? At one point, it was predominantly white females. Now you have what? Now you have more females of color, right? So the population has changed. The curriculum has to change to do what? To meet the expectation and demand of the changing population, student population, right? You make sure that you have what? Sufficient amount of female teachers, right? And sufficient amount of female teachers that are able to what? Provide you with the skills and stuff that you need in order to succeed, right? And then make sure that the needs of the changing population are met. So female students have different needs than the male students, right? You have to make sure that the university provides those services, right? In terms of advising, in terms of career coaching, right? In terms of mentoring. If the university doesn't do that, what happens? The population that you have is going to be underserved, right? Something that you don't want. So the strategic plan should do what? Anticipate higher female articulation, higher needs, higher advising needs, higher career needs, right? Higher placement needs. Right? There's all kinds of things associated with that. The strategic plan needs to cover that. Similarly, in the nonprofit, the strategic plan has to look at revenue sources, expenditure sources, change in program and services, because the strategic to make sure that the organization has the ability to do what? To survive and to meet the changes in the population. If it doesn't have a strategic plan, you don't know where you're going to go. Right? Now, to your organization about public safety money, yes, the strategic plan has to address that. If this revenue source is going to diminish over time, then strategic what to do in order to compensate for that decline in revenue. Are there foundations that we can tap? Is there grant money that we can tap? Is there alternative sources of revenue that we can tap? Right? Because you have to meet that shortfall. Because why? Because you have to provide those programs and services on a continuous basis. The strategic plan has to do that. Guess what? Most nonprofits don't have a strategic plan. They don't have a financial plan. They don't have a programmatic plan of how the program is going to change over time, what additional programs are needed. So if you're talking about working in a nonprofit sector, these are the things that you need to address. Because if you become an executive director, those are the issues that you're going to have to deal with. And how well you deal with them depends on, one, your skills, but also you understanding that organization thoroughly. And acquiring the people that you need, acquiring the revenue that you need, and developing that structure in order for that organization to be effective and efficient. Yes, ma'am.
What figures for short-term and long-term? Like a short-term plan would be a year, and long-term 3 years, or
Short-term is usually like 3 years. Yeah. Long-term is more 5 or 6 years and going forward. Right? One of the things that nonprofits ought to do is do demographic studies. Because those demographic studies tell you how the population is changing, what the economic conditions of the community, right? Demographic changes, whether the increase in families or decrease in families. If there's an increase in families, are they individuals of color? Are they white? Right? What is the age distribution? That's important because it also lets you know whether or not you're going to have changes in your program and whether there's service gaps. understanding service gaps are important because that means that the organization can then develop programs to meet that service gap. But a lot of nonprofits don't do that. So if you're going to interview for a nonprofit, ask them, do you have a strategic plan? Yeah, then why not? Right? Do you have a short-term outlook, financial outlook? Yes or no? Right? But that's important. That's important for you because one, it tells you whether or not the individuals heading that organization, consider the financial health of the organization, whether or not they're looking at the programs, and whether or not you feel confident that you're going to have a job the next year. If your job is grant funded, you got to make sure that grant is going to be there year after year after year after year, because if that grant goes, you go, not your position goes, unless they have another position where you transition to. All critical questions for you to address in your assignments. Right, management strength, management organization. We sort of cover that. Does the board does the composition of the board such that they have the skills and the expertise to govern the organization? Does the executive director have the expertise and the skills that he or she needs to manage the organization effectively? Are the programs and services managed and organized in a way that you're going to effectively meet of your target population and segments within the population or subpopulations? What are the strengths and weaknesses of the programs and services? Very good at providing shelter, but very bad in providing the health services that these individuals need. Right? What's more important? Their health. Right? And so if you have an organization that's supposed to serve abandoned kids or kids that have been abused, it's not necessarily the financial health that's important. It's what? Their psychological well-being, their mental health, because that's going to be more challenging to overcome than putting clothes on them, right? Exactly, they're going to keep coming. But not only that, long term, what happens? These kids may not adjust well as they go as they progress in age, right? They may have issues of self-esteem, issues of self-confidence, right? There's all kinds of social, mental, and mental health issues that their organization isn't going to meet. So while you're meeting, great, you give them shelter and you give them financial help. There's this more critical need that the agency isn't being. Right? And if the agency can't serve it, then what does it have to do? It has to partner with an organization that provides. So if you're looking at programs or services, weakness and strengths, the strength may be that it provides initial services. The weakness may be what? Long-term services aren't being provided. So when you look at your organization, look at that, right? What is the benefit of this program? And then what is any service gap that may be present because this program focuses specifically on this one region and it doesn't address these other components of the individual? Right? And all of that stems essentially from the service delivery model. I'm going to harp on the service delivery model because that is critical. That essentially highlights the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. How you deliver services is critical for the effectiveness of that agency, of the nonprofit. Because that shows all the linkages across the organization, from the mission to the goals to objectives, to the revenue sources and expenditures, to the programs, from the programs to the outputs to the outcomes, and then the performance measures. Service delivery model. There you go. So if you go to page 21 of the lecture, okay, this essentially is what you're going to have to create based on the information that you get from the organization. It's actually quite simple. If you look at this one is the one that I have in an article that's forthcoming. This looks at nonprofit libraries throughout the U.S. So the library management includes the board and also the chief librarian or executive director of the organization. The board and the executive management are critical for doing what? Establishing the services and programs. Based on that, they also are responsible for obtaining all the revenue and all the supplies and all the personnel that they need to do what? To make sure that those programs and services are adequately funded, adequately staffed, and adequately delivered. You notice two terms, discretionary and non-discretionary. Discretionary revenue is all the revenue that you get that you can allocate any program that you want. Non-discretionary means that those revenues have to be for a particular purpose, usually grants. Or if you get a foundation grant, you get a grant from state government, local government. Those grants are generally specifically for one service, one program. So that money you can't use for other things. Otherwise, you'll get in trouble. Discretionary money, because that means you can fund things as things change, get that money and allocate it to where the growth is occurring, where you need it. Non-discretionary money is good in the sense that you know that revenue is going to be specifically used for one purpose. The downside of that is that if you have problems, you can't money around. I want to make sure that your revenue growth is always, you always experience revenue growth. The revenue growth has to be on that discretionary revenue source, because that's where you're going to get the money to be flexible to fund whatever you want. So if you want to start a new program, if you want to what they call seed money. Seed money essentially is the money that you need to start something. So if you're going to start a new program, a new service, you want to make sure that you have sufficient discretionary money in order for you to do that. Once you start that program and once you start with clientele, then you do what? Then you can go approach foundations, you can get grant money to see if that service is out, if the people that you're serving are eligible for what? For government funding. And then if you do get foundation money and grant money, then you do what? Then the money that you put in there initially does what? It goes back out, and then you can get that money and do other things with it. All right, so having a good discretionary revenue is good. Having non-discretionary revenue is good. Okay, then you notice that ties to programs and services, because those are the things that fund those programs. In terms of libraries, it's having having the children's and adult programs, having the book services and these references, all the online stuff. Now, this particular model specifically looks at outputs. Those are the things that the services provide. Right? So if you're providing electronic services, you want to look at what? The number of people that use the online services. How many books are downloaded electronically? What are there references that we can address? Posted person coming in and to whom? A librarian, a reference person. We're talking about any subscriptions, anything that can be done online. Applications, right? Applications that are done online. Why? Because that saves money. That means that the person gets able to do it online as opposed to coming in, using resources, his or her resources, getting to the library, getting staff time to do what? To do things that the person could have done online if the person is okay. So if you're talking about references, all right, how many kids came in? How many adults came in? How many questions were asked? How many did we answer? How many did we answer effectively? Right, but it's the number of references. Sure. Okay, in terms of the service population, each library has a service population. It's in the thousands, right? Out of the service population, right? How many of them came in as visits? How many of them are members? Right, because in order to check out books, you need to be a member. So how many memberships do we have? Out of those memberships, how many of them actually check out books? How many of them use our programs? Those are all outputs. Now, I didn't include the outcomes here, so the nonprofit libraries. One is an increase in what? Literacy. So if you have students, if you have elementary kids coming in, junior high kids coming in, the library should be what? Enhancing their literacy skills. Should the library be increasing? Their ability to do what? Research. Because if you have a kid and you say, well, here's it's located on here's the number that have the tag, that the kid should be able to what? Go in and retrieve that book. Right? So he or she should go online or even those ones that used to have in files. He or she should be able to go look at that catalog online or elsewhere. Get the name of the book, get the ID number, track it down, right? The person is self-sufficient, understanding how to conduct research. Right? You're also including social capital, meaning that the individual understands what? Then how the community helps him or her. Right? If you have an individual who understands how good how community services work, what are the chances that that person is going to be able to contribute back? Then a person that doesn't take advantage of those services. Here, let me put it this way. I like the operas and symphonies and ballets, but I also like going to rodeos and stuff like that. The more that I go to events, the higher the probability is that what? That I'm going to contribute to those events. Right? Why? Because I'm exposed to them. If you have a individual that's exposed to those organizations and events, that person is what? Well integrated into the community. So the person has a stake in that community. To do what? To make sure that those organizations thrive. You're building social capital. If you have an individual who understands the role of nonprofits, that person is going to do what? Going to volunteer. The person is going to contribute. The person may contribute his or her expertise. So the outcome of utilizing services is that you're providing a way for the individual to become what? Well integrated into the community. So that means social capital. Human capital is the ability for that person to do what? Acquire things that's going to do what? Help him or her. Nonprofit libraries are very good in doing and bringing. They're good for the naturalization of immigrants. Where do people go to get information? The library. So they're there to do what? They're integrating immigrants into what? Into the community. Most nonprofit libraries have what? Services in Spanish, in addition to English. New York, where I'm at, my ex-wife is Chinese. So she wanted literature in Chinese. Where's she going to go? The library in New York, because what? It has a very big population of Chinese. They have a big population of Indians. Right? So there's programs and services in India, right? In Cantonese. Mandarin and Cantonese is for Chinese, right? And another in Konkani if they're from India, right? So libraries provide services in multiple languages to do what? To serve the Indian population. The outcome is that you have these individuals that have become well integrated into the community. That is an outcome. In addition to doing all the servicing, that's not included here. Each nonprofit, each public organization has outcomes that aren't well articulated, that they achieve. You're going to notice those outcomes aren't specified anywhere. That's a weakness of most organizations. Okay? They should articulate those outcomes. Universities don't articulate those outcomes very well either. Because all they think is graduation. Right, but you should be able to do more than that. You should have what? A very good command of English. A very good command of how to do public presentations. Right? Very good on research skills. Tools and techniques that you need to be self-sufficient, to thrive in. Those aren't well articulated in any by most universities. the key performance indicators. Efficiency, resources to provide those services. How effective were we in providing those services? Provide quality services. Now, I'm trying to do several things in this class. One of them is to provide a quality education for you. Because normally I used to pay my salary, right? Your expectation that I'm able to provide you an education that meets all your expectations and exceeds them. Because if I exceed your expectations, more or less quality education. If I'm effective in doing that, and if I'm efficient at that, you're happy. If you get out of here not knowing anything, what are you going to say? Why in the hell did I take Salvador Jorge's class? I didn't learn anything. And then why do I want to concentrate in nonprofit management if I didn't learn anything? And this guy's going to teach the class, right? More broadly, why did I go to NSU when I could have went somewhere else, right? It's all based on what? Quality of services that you get. It's like that for libraries. It's like that in churches. That's it. I'm a church kid. I attended churches and I never attended again. In fact, I didn't even get my tithe for those churches. I didn't get my offerings for those churches. I found another church to get my money to because their services were bad. I mean, how about bad services? Bad services. I can joke about it, and even if I wasn't a preacher's kid, I would joke about it. Yeah, but it means a lot. The quality of service that you get means a lot. It means a lot to the client. It means a lot to the people that work there. It means a lot to donors and foundations for nonprofits. Because donors, foundations, corporate sponsors are looking at what? How well you manage the organization, how well you service the people that you intend to serve. If you want to grow an organization, you have to meet all of this. So this service delivery model for the first assignment is important to understand how well the organization is able to provide those services. That's all this is about. About nonprofit management, you're talking about revenues, expenditures, services, and how well they do it. Now, with that also comes, right, acquiring the people that you need, right? There's a human resources component to it. Do you have the personnel, have the skills to do it? Do you have the revenue sources to do it? Right? All that stuff comes after this class. Okay. Now comes the live cases. The live cases are two that I found, and they're common. The first one is Voices for Children of Broward County. Nice organization, poorly managed. I mean, really poorly managed. There is in terms of financial information on the website. It has a model. It's very limited. The board members that are there, most of them don't have the expertise in order for social services. The Covenant House is extreme opposite. And records for the past 2 years. I'm sure they had more on at one time. It has a very good annual report. The first organization, Voices for Children, doesn't have a real annual report. It just has a brochure. That's it. But they don't tell you. Covenant House has an annual report that's a little bit more. It's still lacking, but you can tell that the Covenant House tends to. The first one is, and I chose it on purpose. One, so that you can contrast with them, but also for your assignments, you can see how well where your organization falls. Does it fall towards the Covenant? Fall more towards the other one. If it falls towards the other one, then you can say it needs to do this, it needs to do that. These are the weaknesses. Right? It doesn't have a board that has the skills in order for it to effectively guide the organization. You can say that's a weakness. You can say that the financial aren't thorough. So you can say that you really don't understand how management is being managed. So one of the recommendations may be what? You may want to look at the composition of the board. Right? You may want to acquire board members that have the ability to guide the organization more effectively. On the financial side, you can say one of the weaknesses is that the financial reports aren't thorough. So you don't know what the financial position of the organization is. If you're talking about services, you can say the services are established, but you don't understand what the outcome is, you don't understand what the goal of the purpose and the goals of the program or service is. Those are all weaknesses. And so if you have an organization like that, you can write out and say you need to do massive improvements. In order for this organization to be well managed, these are the things that are needed. And you can just list them. If you're talking about the covenant house managed, they're the things they don't do a very good job of the performance indicators. There's a cost of service for me. How much does it cost to a person in the housing unit? Don't know. What is the financial solvency of the organization? They have it, but they don't report it. So even though it's well managed and stuff, there are things that are lacking. So most nonprofits are between they're at extremes actually. Extremely, they don't provide much information, and there are other extremes that they provide information, but sometimes there's things that are lacking. And your organization is going to fall somewhere in that. No. So what I'm having you do indirectly is something that I learned a long time ago, 27 years ago. It's called a SWOT analysis. Strengths, opportunities, and threats. That is essentially what you're doing in this class. You're going to assess the strengths of the organization, what it does well, assess the weaknesses of the organization, right? Weaknesses in terms of service delivery, weaknesses in terms of revenue structure, right? The opportunities are going to be your recommendations. How can this organization improve? Then you have the threats, and the threats come from doing that process. And then the threats also come from doing the service gap analysis, doing the outputs and outcomes analysis for 7.1. So although you're not directly doing a SWOT analysis, you are doing it indirectly. I don't call it a SWOT analysis. That's the per se, but the first assignment is a service delivery. You're looking at the strengths and weaknesses of how well services are being delivered. Recommendations to improve the services. Second assignment, you're looking at the financial condition of the organization. Whether the revenue is diverse enough, the revenue structure is sufficient enough to meet the ongoing expenditures. How solvent is the organization? What is the return on investment for human capital? Given $1 of expenditure in our personnel, how much additional revenue did this generate? So you know what? Let me. Which one of you has very good? Because I need to find out where I can go to the internet. Oh, this is so cluttered with all kinds of stuff.
So, look at the little Windows icon on your left. The button. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, select Google Chrome.
Thank you. Does it show up there? All right. So let me go to Voices for Children. Broward County. Here we go.
Yeah, they work with the Guardian and Lighting program.
Yes. You work for them?
I used to volunteer for Guardian and Lighting.
All right. So you know this organization.
Yeah, I think the manager came and talked about it, but there's not a lot of them.
No, that's why I chose it.
I think she's still like developing it or
Yeah.
turning to her.
Yeah. So what I say here, my impression of it, looking at the website, is maybe more accurate than not. So
It's a work in progress.
yes, well, but it also shows that having an executive director that understands the organization, understands what it's supposed to do, is very critical. And I don't know, for some reason, it's not popping up.
Try clicking on it again.
It doesn't. No, it's still, if you see it, it's still spinning.
Oh.
Yeah, it's still spinning. Yeah. So when I looked at the website, I looked at her little bio, and so there were things on there. She was a fundraiser. She was this and that and then the other. So she's more of a finance person as opposed to someone who actually more of a programmatic person. That's my sense. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my sense.
A brief introduction.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So that's my sense. That's my sense of yeah. And so here's the thing about executive director. And I'm just going to say this in general, broadly speaking. Most executive directors are brought in to raise revenue. But not necessarily to do what I call the program management. And I'm of the view that if we're going to work with any type of organization, it's not just raising the revenue, it's making sure that those programs are working the way they're supposed to. Because what's important is that the clients that you serve are the ones that are receiving quality services, making sure that their needs are being met. And you can raise all the revenue you want, right? But if those services aren't delivered in a manner that you're meeting all the needs of the clients, then you don't have a very effective organization. It's great on paper, and you can be as solvent as you want, right? But what's happening to your population? They're not being served. And the purpose of a nonprofit is to do what? Provide services that government and private sector don't provide, and you provide them so that those people that you're serving are what? Are better off than when they came in. Look at it this way. If you leave without having any skills when you leave this class, what happened to your money? You wasted it. And I can tell you this is under development, but it doesn't help because you just walked out of the class without knowing anything. When you hire someone, I'm not just picking on the person in this class. Okay? When you hire someone for they have they have the skills and ability and the expertise to do what? To take an organization, improve on the services and programs that it provides, in addition to doing what? Making sure that the personnel that you have is adequate, making sure that the revenue sources that are there are continuously growing. They grow for the purpose of what? Making sure that organization is being enhanced and that those programs are being what? Strengthened. That's the goal of work in the private sector. If I were to work Macy's, for example, I need to make sure that what? Every customer that comes in have a very good experience. Not only that, but making sure that what? That I have the merchandise that what? That he or she wants, and it's a high quality. And then when they're paying for something,
that what? It isn't going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart. Okay? But I also have to make sure that what? That my sales associates are what? Courteous, professional, trained to do what? To convince you that our merchandise is what? What you need. Not only that, I have to make sure that what? My sales managers are what? Do what? To manage their sales associates. To make sure that they're meeting what? If there's a sales quota, make sure that they meet their sales quota. To make sure that what? That every customer experience is what? Positive. That I minimize complaints. That I minimize returns. Right? If I have a store manager, that store manager has to be what? In charge of all the personnel, in charge of making sure that the buyers are able to get the closing. I used to work at main company. This is just for one branch, and you have to go up and up and up. That's how you assess a store. Sales, right? Returns, turnover. Those are all key performance. Same thing for nonprofits. How well a store is managed depends on the store manager. How well a nonprofit is managed depends on what? Executive director and the board. I still can't get this.
Yeah, I mean the website on my computer came up, but like when I try to click on the links, it's not like that. It's not. I think this might be.
That's the building. Because when I was staying at the Sheridan before, I still haven't moved into the apartment, so I was at the Sheridan Suites, and I was on my laptop. I was able to get on no problem. I came here, it'll click and then it'll go. Yeah. So this is for you have experience as a volunteer. Right now, as a volunteer, did you receive any training?
For guardian ad litem?
Yeah.
A little, not that much.
So basically, you just give it a kid and here you go.
Well, really understaffed, and that's the biggest problem. And they don't really attempt, like the case managers who are in charge of the volunteers, don't really attempt to learn their names. Like they sent me 3 letters and they spelled my name 3 different times. But it's that, and then like they do give you like 3 days of training in terms of like the issues with care dependency, child abuse, warning signs. But like you have to create these official reports for cases, and you actually have to, and to court, and they don't really provide you that sort of like training. And I think they even did a study and they posted it on the Guardian of Light website on like their volunteer retention rates, because volunteers are the main part of the program that keep it going, but they're just like there's a high retention because they just can't keep the volunteer, and it's because the case managers don't spend enough time, and so it's like this ongoing thing. And then all the partnerships that they have with voices and different things like that, they're really great because they come in as like guest speakers. But they don't really tell you, like, if you want to volunteer for us, if you want to know more, like, you can always reach me. Like, they'll give you cards, but it's not like there's no sort of formal events that come after. There's no, like, follow-through, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting process because you kind of have to figure things out for yourself. But there's no sort of, like, oh, okay, I made a mistake, oops.
Well, then, so this, I had a sense based on what was on the website that sort of stuff was sort of happens. Unfortunately, you can't use it for your but what happens in a lot of nonprofits, it's the nature. Let me give an analogy. My father, both my parents graduated from theological seminary. very well educated, autistic, and these things. My father used to joke around, and he would joke around, and he would meet somebody, and that person wanted to be a minister or a pastor. And my dad would joke around within the family. But this guy just wants to, put on a suit and just go up there and speak. And just because you have the gift of gab doesn't mean that you're going to be what? A very good pastor, a very good administrator. What happens when somebody comes with a marital problem? And you don't have the ability to do mentoring or guiding and that stuff. You may be damaging that marriage, right? Because you don't have the skills that you need in order to do it. Well, in the nonprofit world, more so than in the private sector and the public sector, you have individuals who want to do well, right? They want to help out, but there's no structure for them to get to what? The training and the skills in order for them to do that. Now, if you notice, you're going to notice throughout the semester, I'm very interactive with the students that I have, both online and in class. If you ask a question, what I do, I try to answer it as thoroughly as I possibly can. It has to be a question. If you're a manager and you're dealing with, even if you're a volunteer, and you're dealing with clients, and I had a discussion with an individual actually moving forward. He's a director of social services, and we're talking. It's one thing is important is what clients value. But what's more vitally important is the things they don't value. Voices for children. There's stuff on that's okay. But there's other stuff that's more critical that isn't on there. Right? The number of clients that they serve. Distribution of the clients that they serve. Right? Gender distribution of clients that they serve. Right? Talk about they're great at getting volunteers. I read that. They're great at getting volunteers. They may not be so great in retaining them. If you want to have very good services, you want to make sure that you have what? That you retain those volunteers. Because those volunteers are going to acquire expertise that you don't have. They're constantly interacting with people, with the kids. If they're noticing that there's particular issues with the kids, to the case manager, what happens? That program never what? Meets those special needs of the kids. There are only going to be kids that are what? That are articulated and that are what? That are under the purview of the case manager. But there may be stuff that never gets addressed. So if you talk about meeting social outcomes and stuff like that, you're never going to meet why? You don't understand what? The needs of those kids. The volunteers, if they're not properly trained, that shows up or what? Doesn't provide the most effective services for that kid. If you're talking about, again, going back to this whole purpose of social management, but everything that we talk about, both individual and also online, all of that impacts the organization. It's how the staff are able to communicate with the clients, versus and meet the needs of those clients, because that is what's make the program work. It's based on the people that you have. If you have people that aren't skilled at training volunteers, that aren't skilled in meeting the needs of people, that program is going to underserve the population. It's going to be ineffective. It's not going to meet the outcomes. How many executive directors understand that? Very few. Because they're pressured to do what? Raise revenue. They're pressured to raise revenue to get volunteers. The last thing on their mind is how well is our program actually functioning. My job as a professor, my job as a former employee of a nonprofit, my job as a former government employee is to make sure, and even when I worked in those organizations, I try to hire the person that was the most qualified to do what? provide the services. I will pay people well, like very well, because I wanted to make sure that one, I was going to meet their economic and financial needs. I also try to do my best to provide them professional development, to make sure that they were constantly acquiring new skills. I constantly try to do a mentoring with them and coaching to make sure that they were able to provide that were needed, and to make sure people that they had interact with. Because not only is it a reflection on me, an organization, and how well I manage that place. Very well trained people. I have very well organized structure. Services that are being provided extremely efficient and effective. The people that I'm serving are going to be what? Extremely happy. They're going to say what? That organization is doing the best can to do what? Provide what I need. Most nonprofits don't think like that. How many people there receive? 3,000, great. And it goes beyond that. How do we do our job? Do I have the staff that is going to provide those services effectively? Do I have staff that are properly trained? Are they training volunteers? Do I have the financial staff that I need to make sure that our revenues are being correctly? Make sure that our expenditures are being controlled, and if they're expanding, do we have the revenue to pay for it? Do I have a board that's going to provide proper advice based on their skills, based on their understanding of the organization, that's going to help me to manage this place? Those are the critical questions that you need for any organization, but more so for nonprofits. Because nonprofits depend on revenue that's unstable for the most part. Unless you have an endowment. An endowment is a donation that a wealthy person, and that's going to sustain the organization. Part of the increase was for services. Part of the increase of the endowment stays to grow the endowment. After an endowment, you have to find ways to raise revenue. To raise revenue, you have to manage those revenues in a way that you know that you're going to maximize each. Maximizing each dollar means that you're not wasting it, making sure that those services are being provided efficiently so that there isn't additional money being spent on things that they shouldn't be spent on. Making sure that staff is adequately compensated, because an adequately compensated staff means that they will be productive, and that means there's going to be less turnover. Higher turnover means you're going to have higher expenditures for recruiting people. That also means that services are going to not be as strong as they would because you have people that are constantly coming in, learning the program, they learn the program and get out. High turnover is not good. And it's instability.
About like shared projects. Most of the time, like grants are like shared between the two like nonprofits. Do you think that's beneficial? Those not like competition, where you might have the program, the same program, you share the same thing, but one program might be exporting it like better than the other program. So what do you think? That's why I share.
The issue that you have is with the one that you raised. One program may be may be very effective. Another program may be lacking. And so I'm looking at it from not just in terms of the money, right? Because the revenue you're going to need to provide the service. So the theory that you have is that the other organization is not performing the way it's supposed to perform to make the grant at risk, and that's the downside. On the service side is that the efficiency of the program gets diminished because you have one. Let me put it to you this way: if I were to assign group assignments, which I did, if you happen to be a very effective and efficient person, and I assign and to get an and some of your team members weren't as proficient and effective as you, that would drag you down. It would also make the accomplishment more difficult for you. That also means that your grade to some extent will suffer. Okay? Because the person the persons that are on your team aren't as competent as you. Now, put that in the context of a nonprofit. Organization that's super effective, super efficient, knows what they're doing, providing services for people, and you have a dragger, a person that you have to drag, that doesn't provide the services as well as you. That means you're going to provide inefficient, ineffective services. It also means that the revenue that you should be getting is now being siphoned off by someone who isn't doing it as well. That's the downside. Some indirect agency is not as effective as it would be if it had its grant on its own. Only because you have to partner with somebody. Right? And those partnerships, again, it depends on how well the other organization functions, manages, and is able to meet the needs of all the clients. Personally, I would try to get a grant on my own, but the organization is supposed to partnering. Partnership is the only way you're going to get it. And what you have to do is make sure that that organization is able to provide the services as well as you. And if they're not doing that, then there has to be a way, there has to be a mechanism where your organization help, if they're willing to accept that help. Because that means that ultimately you're accountable for meeting that criteria, the performance criteria of that grant. And so if you work in an organization like that, I would consider looking at how the organization is performing.
I used to work on my position was grant funded, and we partnered with another organization. And it just seemed like it was like between, but one was clearing, like you said, and we were the ones that were always like, wow, we always contracting that grant back. So I was wanting to know, like, is that official or could that pose as a threat?
Yes, it's a risk, it's a threat. It's a threat through the organization. One is that although you're not in competition, the other one is, right? But it also means to some extent that your effectiveness and your efficiency is being diminished by the organization that isn't keeping up to par. If they're underperforming, to some extent, that's going to have an indirect impact on you. It's also going to affect the mission of the organization, right? Because that means rather than if you're given X amount of clients to serve and you can serve more, that means those additional clients you're not going to serve because they have to depend on the person. So that means what you could have done, you're no longer doing because they're siphoned off, right? So it also means that the cost of service is high because that means that the service population of yours is artificially being shrunk because they have to go to the partner, right? And so the cost of service is high. You're talking about also, if you're talking about a shared grant, that means what you would have gotten, you no longer have because you have to share it with somebody. That's part of the grant, right? The other the services. If you're providing services that are efficient and effective, and you're meeting each standard of the grant, and the other person isn't, there's a risk that you're going to have that grant reduced or eliminated, unless that partner does what? Improves dramatically. But if a person is constantly in competition, is worried about whatever, what's the chances of that program being enhanced? It's not, because they become more obsessed with the competition as opposed to doing what? Servicing the community, servicing the people. It's all about the primary goal is to serve the client. If I'm a police officer, my job is to do what? Not abuse. Right? Not to run away if there's not to do like the guy in Orlando or whatever was a school shooting. The guy hit somewhere and says, "Oh, I was going to go in." No, if you're there to serve and protect, you can only serve and protect. If you're nonprofit, you're there to serve the client, then you serve the client. Serve the client the best way that you possibly can. The resources that you have, the client, with the staff that you have, the programs you establish. If there's a service gap, you do your best to increase the revenue. You do your best to get the people that you need, and you go to those services and programs and you enhance them the best that you can to meet that service gap. That is essentially the purpose of managing an organization. Think of it as managing a family. You have to make sure what the kids are fed, the house is paid, there's furniture, right? You provide advisory services for them. If they have an issue, you address it, you solve it. Right? You make sure that the transportation is adequate. That isn't going to be breaking down because you got to take those kids, right, to school. You don't take them to school. They have their activities that they go to, right? You have to meet all of those needs of that household with the income. If the needs are increasing in your household, what do you need? You need more income. I mean, either you're gonna get a new job, or somehow you're gonna have to increase your salary. Not just yours, but also your spouse. Right? As the kids get older, the economic responsibilities become higher. Their needs become greater. Right? If you want them to go to university or college, you have to do what? You have to save. If you're going to save money, that means less income for doing what? Vacations. Less income for buying a new car. Right? So there's a trade-off. Ultimately, you're going to have sufficient amount of money to do what? To help them to go to college. So the same principles that are used in a household, manage that household, make sure that the clients, the kids, are well served, or have the educational opportunities that they have, right? That you're meeting their medical needs, meeting their social needs, meeting their physical needs. All of that stuff is applied to an organization. Because our organization needs to thrive. How well you do as a mother, how well you do as mom, how well you do as an aunt, how well you do as an in-law, all of that stuff is organization. If the event requires you to work with a partner, guess what? You're going to have to help that partner. Even that partner may think you're in competition. Why? But ultimately, it's your survival. All right. That is my lecture for today. I will try to go about this amount of time, but what I like to do, both online students and students in the class, I'm going to reserve the last hour or so to go through your assignment, through your case. So if you have your case, bring it, because it'll be more interactive. Second, I get to know what you're doing. Not that I like to micromanage, but if I can give you advice and stuff on your project, even if you have questions about your project, your assignments, I'll spend the time going through it. I'd rather do that than spend 3 or 4 hours of lecturing. I want to make sure that you get the most out of the class. Because if you're happy, I'm going to be happy. Seriously. And again, I'll finish lecture number 6, which is very important for the second assignment. What I try to do, because I knew there's going to be issues of being given access to Canvas, to the course. I try to get everything out to you guys, given that this thing was going to have an issue because I was hired like that. I wanted to give you as much information as I could through my emails. Have everything that you need for the assignments. The assignments the lectures that are important are the ones. This one is important because of the service delivery model. Lecture number 3 is important. The one on revenue diversity. and then lecture 6 on the financial analysis. Those are essentially the three lectures that are important for your assignments. All the other stuff that I cover is just supplemental stuff, things that are tied to service delivery model, things that are tied to revenue diversity performance. And so those lectures, you can go through them. And I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that will help you with the assignment. But I wanted to make sure that you guys have that. So if you want to work on them simultaneously, you can. And then if you have any questions as you work on them simultaneously, if you have any questions, I'll answer them. That's not a problem for me. It depends on you guys, how fast you guys want to work on them. The sooner you get them done, the more feedback I can give to you, and then you'll have a nice product by the end of the quarter. Obviously, that applies to the online people. Again, feel free to email me, call me, whatever. Do whatever is necessary to get the advice that you want from this little guy.
You also email the syllabus to the campus.
Yeah, I emailed her. Yeah, but you know what? If you and I'll email it to you. Yeah, that's not a problem. But yeah, everything's on Canvas. If you
I don't know if it's
no, the connections here are bad. Yeah, if you go to Canvas and you go to the home page, go to the home page that has lecture 1, then you click on that little arrow, and it has all the documents.
yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So there's a file called the syllabus draft, because I wrote it before I got here. I wanted to get something on, so I did that. You have templates in there, Excel templates. All you will need to do on those templates is just put in your own stuff. The revenue diversity, you just change the names and just replace the figures that I have with your figures, and there's a formula at the bottom that populates by itself. I think. If not, I'll do it. Yeah, so everything is literally at your fingertips. Yeah, I would never ask you something I'd never do something. I'm not one of those professors that tells you to do something and not give you not show you how to do it, and not give you the spreadsheet that you need to do it. That's not a good way of learning, I don't think. So I give you the stuff so that way you can enter the stuff and do it, see how the things operate. Yes, ma'am.
So for assignment 1 and 2, it's supposed to find a nonprofit closely aligned with your area of interest. I work for a nonprofit right now. Could I do the one I work for?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Because I don't think a lot of the financial, I think on Gold Star they have like the tax returns of the previous year, but I don't know about like detailed financial reports that do show like net, gross, sort of total amounts that were earned kind of thing.
Yeah. Try to get the financial reports. So each nonprofit actually needs to produce those reports. So they're somewhere, but they may not be publicized. So I'm sure they have. Are you one of the executives?
No.
Permission from your boss.
Yeah.
If you need a letter from me, that's fine. I'll give you a letter.
Okay.
Yeah. What assignment requires that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Because I think they're in our internal. I work for Standing with Promise, so they're the guys at safety. And I work in more of like the anonymous reporting system here, not really like.
All right. Named after the Sunday Hook event over.
Yes. Yeah. For parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they have the reports. It's just you have to access permission. I need to go through like the managing director.
Yeah, no, yeah. So what I meant by that is, I mean, if you work for the nonprofit, then yeah, if you need a letter,
Okay.
yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Please, but it's also beneficial for them to have you work on, because then you get to understand and you contribute to the organization as opposed to doing something that isn't related to anything. That's not helpful.
Mhm.
You're doing an assignment that's just doesn't relate to your profession. People do that. Yeah, you should be able to get it, and this time is confidential at all. It's only between you and me, and that's it. It stays there. It doesn't go anywhere. I'll write them the letters. It's all confidential. Change the name of the organization. Say change the name of the organization, and whatever organization you want to call it, that's fine. Change everything. Yeah, that way after that, sensitive about it. I don't know. People get very protective of that stuff. People get very protective of that.
Yeah, it's very detailed, or like it's very secure.
Yeah.
Um,
So everything is in like public information, even though you're like giving service to like the public.
It depends on like every organization is different. Like there's like in the private sector, all that stuff is private, really private. But if they want to put on their annual reports on, they do that. They do that for several reasons. One is because if people that want to buy stock, invest, then they need to know that. Right? Libraries are very good at providing their annual reports. Public libraries, they're very good at doing that. Other nonprofits are very more. They sort of, I don't want to say they're secretive, but they're less willing to share that. And I don't know why, but the Covenant House puts all that stuff up. Annual financial report, to put it up and stuff, which is good because if you got people like me who want to donate, I'm going to look at their financial condition. I'm going to look at, as a person who looks at nonprofits, I want to make sure that I'm going to, if I'm going to give, X amount of dollars, I want to make sure that those dollars are going to be used. Right? It's the same thing when I donate to churches. Right? If I know if the church seems like one of those churches that isn't, like one of the fly-by-night churches, and one of those things that just, I don't, I don't, why would I attend? I want a church that's very well managed, because that means that they're using my tithe and my offering, then they're not necessarily going to buy the preacher's Mercedes. That happens. Yeah, I'm very careful. As I try to be careful. Yeah. So yeah. I don't. Do you notice I don't take the whole back? Do you like to know people's names?
Shakira,
Pardon?
Vigil Meta.
That-
Meta.
Questions before I let you guys go? Yeah. Just give me the information that you need, and I'll write it down.
Oh, and are you okay if I record the class?
It's being recorded.
Oh.
Yeah.
Personal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't care. Yeah. I don't mind. No, not at all. Because it's also being recorded for people who are. So if you're not here physically, it's being recorded, so you can always download it, whatever. The more important stuff in the lectures are when I apply the stuff to the case study. That's the most important part. And what I wanted to do, I won't do it this quarter because I actually just literally moved here on Thursday. One called Temptation. What I want you to start utilize that for the video sort of stuff, rather than doing just the audio, or the camera just doesn't focus on me. So yeah, I try to do the best that I can to give you guys. Right? And you can tell from the lecture, I'm not going to do a lot of theory stuff. I'm not a theory person. I do when I write papers, but not in classes. It's more important that you guys, like I said, get the things that you need over there. understand the organization. All right. Ms. Carson, thank you. Thank you. And those of you online, thank you. I was going to go do that. All right. Feel free to call me, do whatever. If you want to start your project, start them whenever you want. Yeah, I'm not going to. Yeah, I will never stop you from doing your project. Never. No, I mean, it's actually good that I started immediately. That's fine because I'll help you through it. I purposely did those lectures. So they're sort of in modules. And if you just want to do 1 major assignment, like have part 1 and part 2, and some of those at once, that's fine. I'm very flexible. It's up to you guys. I'll never tell you don't work on something. If you're like me, I try to start very early. I try to get me some as quickly as I can. Only because that means I get feel my plans for other things. Right? And if you guys work, then I want you guys to dedicate more time to family and work as opposed to work for class. That sound good? All right.